band This had just came out and Stacy quit, and we were bummed. You know what I mean? Like, Stacy was everything. Like, he was the one that, like, understood us, got us, whatever. It's like, you know, who was going to be the one we talked to now? And luckily at that time, it was Lance Mountain. You know, he was actually shooting photos with us, and he would invite us to his mini ramp, and, like, you know what I mean? He made us feel part of, like, the Bones Brigade. You would think that there would be some like day, like some single line that it's like you rode for Powell and now you ride for Blind, but it wasn't really like that. It's like, you know, Stacy had quit and somehow me and Rudy just started hanging out with Mark Gonzalez. And I think for the next like 6 months, we were actually staying at Mark Gonzalez's house in Huntington Beach. And I remember just being so blown away by the tricks and the spots that this guy was like doing. I was like, dude, I wanted to stick as close as I can with this person. It was like this Gabriel Rodriguez effect all over. And it's just such another progressive time in my life. Everything was so new that he did. Nothing he did was just normal. And I remember like sometimes like struggling with that. Like, why can't this guy just go skate normal? You know what I mean? Like, it had to be a curvy rail or like some like hard bank or like some, you know, massive obstacle. Nothing was official, you know what I mean? But we were already like wearing get-aware, riding world boards. Like, you know, we had like been drawn on our grip tape because like we're hanging around Mark. And at one point, like Rudy shows up and he's like, hey, I'm gonna like skate for Blind. And I was just like, okay, like I am too. Like we kind of already are, like, you know what I mean? We're already like staying at this dude's house. We skate with them all the time. It's like, let's not fool ourselves. We know what we're doing here. So Mark takes us up to Tony Hawk's house. And we were still on Powell at the time. So we get to Tony Hawk's ramp and he's skating and I'm like, do the nose blunt.
Oh.
What do you want me to do, dude?
Nose blunt.
I'd already seen him do it on a small vert ramp. And it was just, you know, way ahead of its time. And he puts his board backwards and he's just doing no-handed blunts. And I think at the time, like, he didn't really want to show Tony Hawk the nose blunt because, you know, he's probably saving it. And like, Tony's Tony. He's probably gonna like do a bunch of variations after it. And I remember it was funny in that session, like I try to do this frontside air and like I bail and I think I land on my elbow or something and like I think I like fractured my rib. I just tried to skate out the day and like play it off like it didn't hurt. But so we have this like great session and I remember at one point Mark and Tony are talking and I remember the demeanor of the session changed. And it was kind of like weird. We felt the vibe and I was like, all right, this is weird. You know, Tony seems like, you know, kind of bummed out or something. And when we're driving home, I remember Mark was telling us that like he told Tony that like he wanted us to ride for Blind and that we were gonna ride for Blind. And I think Tony was bummed, man, and like I was like super bummed because like Tony's someone I looked up with crazy. And I didn't want to offend him in any way, and like nor was it about Tony or Powell. It was just about like the reality. It's like, you know, Stacy had quit and that had a big effect on us. And now Mark was our Stacy. You know, at that time too, you have to realize like Powell was really big and Blind was small. So even like certain people in my life were like, you know, like even my mom or something would be like, Powell was your dream team. What are you doing? And it's just like, I don't know if you would understand, but I want to go over here with this guy. Like, he's the best. I want to be next to him. Now, like, it's official. We're on Blind. The crew is like me, Mark, Jason, Rudy, and Spike. And so Spike Jones at this point, I have no idea who this guy is or who he is to become, but he's just as like young and wild as Mark and Jason.
What do you think, Spike? Seriously? You think I need to go to the hospital, Spike?
I remember the first time that Spike showed up to shoot my first Blind at. It was like a backside nose grind on the bench, and it was just such a different working environment than what I was used to with Stacy when we went to do something. It was a big production, you know what I mean? And in this way, it was like me and Spike show up to this school and like shoot this picture, and we're out, and I'm just like, this is comfortable. And it felt like just friends out doing a thing. I remember just thinking it was going to be a different feeling working on this project than it would be for working on the Powell project. This was going to be something that was going to be more trick-based, I would say, you know what I mean, and focused on the trick and making sure we got the right trick. One of the first trips I took with blind, we went up to San Francisco, and it was interesting because the first spot I think we got to was San Luis Obispo, I think, when Mark board slides that really long flat bar. And so we get out of the car and Mark tries a couple tries, and it's all of a sudden it's there was Jason out there, he pulls out a camera and he's gonna shoot at one angle and Spike was gonna do another. It was just so rad that it was very hands-on and just us doing it. Jason and Mark were unbelievably good. And around the time of the blind video, there was all these older pros which were in the same age generation as Mark and Jason. And I mean, they had to have been 21, 22 at the most at the time. And these guys were being pushed out of skateboarding. And what I found with Mark and Jason is that they were two definitely people that were doing some of the best skating of their lives. They were in their prime. Right towards the end of the blind video, skateboarding was about to go into a very sloppy area, you know what I mean? I think one of my last tricks was a late shove it big spin or something, and it's that was right before skateboarding probably got pretty nasty. I remember having a moment with Jason one time where, you know, Jason was good at always joking around and making fun of a situation or just making light of it, you know what I mean, to get a point across. And I remember one time I was doing some tricks and Jason kind of mocked me skating and making fun of how would you like to see something like this or like this? And it was at a point where he saw the reaction on my face, you know what I mean, that I was kind of hurt by what he had done. He was oh man, I'm just joking. He had very high standards of how he liked to do his stuff, and I think that was one of the biggest influences Jason had on me, is showing me, you know, you can do anything you want, but how do you want it to look? That was a super important lesson at a young age when I was just thinking the only thing was important was just doing new tricks. I think too that during that time of the blind video, everything was going really trick-based, and the blind video had some lines in it, and the flow of the video just flowed, and it just brought a refreshing view back into skate videos. You know what I mean? Which would be the path that people would take from there into basically our modern day parts that you see today. The funny thing about working on that video is that was a time in life where you're so caught up in the experiences that you're having and the fun that you're having with Mark Gonzalez and Jason Lee and learning tricks and seeing all this wild stuff that we weren't really focused on what the impact of that video would be. But when we seen the video, we were super stoked, to say the least. For me, it's now that's what a video part is supposed to look like. That's what a song in a part is supposed to feel like. You know what I mean? When you see that jazz with Mark Gonzalez, you're yes, makes sense. And really reflected who we were at the time, you know what I mean? So then you know, Mark's leaving blind and Jason ends up leaving, and I definitely felt in limbo, you know what I mean? With my skating, which way I was gonna go, you know, where's my influence? You know, now it's all on me. And I think that was a transitional period in my skating. And so around that time, I meet Chico and Day One and Eric Costin and Tim Gavin and Henry Sanchez and all these people that are gonna be the next generation of skateboarding. I think the next best thing that happened to me as far as inspiration was Henry Sanchez. Henry at the time, he was full of power, he was full of progression, he had so much fight in him, he was so hungry, and he was, you know, my new Mark Gonzalez.
You never know. Hey! One more try, one more try. Oh, well. Okay, watch this, dude. I'm making a broken
It was funny because I look back at those times and I think that I was skating really good. I was probably doing great, but the fact that I was just next to Henry all the time, it's just you know, you're just average, man. And I think that everybody really dealt with that with Henry, you know what I mean? And that was a challenging time in skateboarding for me because everyone was really good. And I was getting to an age where I couldn't be good for my age anymore, I just had to be good. You know what I mean? I was getting a little bit older. And that was around the time that the Tim and Henry video came out.